Welcome back to Attitude Effort Results presented by Teamwork Online and the Clubhouse. Today's a fun one. The reason today is going to be fun is because we're going to figure out, everybody out there listening, you're going to figure out a way to tie sports into a non-sports position. And I'm really excited to have Austin with us here today. I'm curious how that works, so I know everybody out there is curious as well. A man with a really big heart and a man who's impacted lives, worked for multiple organizations across the country so far. And so excited to have Austin here today, providing value for everybody, especially if you want to go on the community relations side, the foundation side of sports, which we have not had, by the way, a foundation member on the podcast yet. So we are really hitting every aspect of sport. Really excited. Welcome to the podcast, Austin Claiborne.
Appreciate it, Tanner. Happy to kick it off and give a little intro. At least I'll start kind of what my role is. So I currently work for Pacific Gas and Electric Company. We're based in California, all over California, 70% of it we serve. And what my role is, I work as an expert community relations specialist. So I oversee distributing grants out to local nonprofits, specifically in STEM, in the skilled trades. And then a portion of that is also working closely with a lot of our local sports teams, 9, in fact, on their foundation initiatives. So a lot of the work that they do through STEM or through sustainability programs, I work with them from PG&E standpoint. So at least that's kind of what I do. And I'm happy to kick off at least a little bit how I got into this path. I think helps people want to know how do you go from sports and work into that side. So
Yeah,
uh
you have if people would go to your LinkedIn, which everybody should go to LinkedIn. Like, we don't need a full background because I want people to go to LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is like a Teamwork Online dashboard because you have had so many different experiences. You have had so many different roles, mostly on the West Coast in the state of California, which is crazy. My dad and I did a trip out there, and my mom, I don't know why you live in California, but we don't need to go down that route. But you have had some really intense roles. You've had some roles that have been very impactful. And I'm curious how that is all tied into what you're doing now. Give us a short, I always say Spark
Absolutely.
Notes version to impact everybody out there and let them understand kind of how you got to where you're at.
100%. Yeah. I think kind of what started with trying to get in sports was just figuring out what I wanted to do. And so I think when I first heard about jobs in sports and found Teamwork Online when I was 16 and was Googling different opportunities of like, oh, I want to do a job like that, but I need this type of experience. It made it click for me of like, okay, I just need to try and apply to jobs and figure out what works. And so, kind of what you mentioned, I did a bunch of different roles. So at least my first opportunity started out actually in DC. I did a program working with ESPN Radio and formerly the Redskins, now the Commanders, and came back to California, did some stuff with Sparks with social media, did things with Ontario Reign and sales, then moved to the Bay, did a bunch of different marketing roles with Oakland Raiders, A's, Berkeley, then landed at the Warriors. And so the whole point of all this was like learning, okay, what are different ways you can work in sports, but also get knowledge of, okay, if I want to find a job that brings value or passion that you're like, I'm excited going to work every day. I need to figure out what I'm good at, you know? So I think that was a part of it, of trying out a bunch of different teams in different industries and different sports leagues, obviously, and kind of finding my calling with like giving back. I think that was what I ended up finding out of once I did a role with the Warriors and landed in the foundation. That was my first full-time job. But in that role, I was really learning of, oh man, you can use sports as a lens to provide value or give back to the community. And that was something I didn't know I could do in sports. And so once I found that, um, I don't know, hit my calling, I would say, and that was really what like resonated with me of, okay, let me figure out how to now use fundraising, or how do we use sponsorship side of what we do in sports to give back to the community. And so lo and behold, we had partners from the Warriors, and that's how PG&E partnered with us, my current company, and found a role in how to do it on the corporate side. So at least still be able to be in philanthropy and providing, giving back to the community that you wanted to serve, but can I do it with sports as well as in the corporate side? So very unique path in how I got there, but yeah, at least learning about it was a big part of trying as many roles, getting uncomfortable in things that may not seem like a role I was gonna do, but like I learned a ton and it put me out of my comfort zone enough to be, okay, you know what? This might be a skill set I can add on if I find another full-time job or opportunity.
I was listening to a podcast this morning actually, and it was from David Meltzer, who I is a serial entrepreneur. Obviously, he's co-founded a sport agency, and I've
Mhm.
had the opportunity to be around him a little bit. He said there's three things in life that you need to make sure of. One, he said, is you have to buy a really good bed because you spend
It's
a
like,
third of your life in it. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. From one of the influential people in the world, buy a good bed. That's interesting. The second he said was find a good spouse because you're going to spend a third of your time, third of your life with your spouse. I said, wow, that's cool. All right, I'm pretty much 2 for 2 right now. Like, what else you got?
go.
and, and he said the third thing is find work that you love because you're going to spend a third of your life at work. And you mentioned it. You found something that you were passionate about. It didn't come to you. You went out and sought that. What was the process like once you found that? Right. So people out there right now are searching for something that they enjoy doing, that they find passionate. What was that process like? And how did you stay with it to eventually land in that role? It seemingly was with the Golden State Warriors. When you landed that role there, what was that process like? Because there's a lot of people out there right now trying to do the same thing.
100%. Yeah, I'd probably have to attribute it to 2 things. So, first was everyone in my family actually works in nonprofit or in education, and so it was an interesting thing of not resonating with me until I had the role of like, "Oh, everyone in our family is just of service." That's just a core part of what we do, but I didn't know about that until I got into sports of like, "Oh, man, this is where I probably needed to be." I always share that because even I have a little brother, and he's the youngest one, just graduated college last year, and he's teaching English in Korea. Just randomly, that's kind of our family. Like we just find ways of like we want to help, and so that was like a big part of it. I think of finding out like where your roots are, and so. But the second was probably I have to give a lot of the credit to Simon Sinek from Start with Why.
Man.
That is my book. I've probably read it a dozen times. All my students I advise know. I recommend it all the time, but that was I think the core part of asking yourself those 3 questions of why, how, what, and how the average person does the inverse of they're asking, "What do I wanna do? How am I gonna get there? And why am I doing this job?" And it's like, that's too late to ask that when you're trying to figure out, "What do I wanna do? I want to do finance and how am I going to do it? I got to go to college and then I find this job. Once you're in the job, you're asking, why am I doing this? It's probably too late. You're already graduated, you're already in the role. Like it's probably hard to make a pivot at that point. And so asking yourself, why do you want to do this work first, kind of set the precedent on what I enjoyed or what I found value in. And I think for me, in being in a role with foundation is like, why do I enjoy this work? And it was always to like motivate students from back home where I'm from, where we grew up playing sports, but we never knew we can work in it.
Mm.
And so, like, my why with being in sports, that was what set the tone. But by the time I got into the foundation, it was like, well, why are you in this work? And it's, oh, there's so many students who know about the Warriors. There's so many students who know about these sports teams. But what gets you going every day is knowing, okay, can I provide value of using foundation dollars or fundraising to provide for these schools and helping students, especially when I joined the role, it was right at the pandemic. It actually was, I think I started that role 2 months after the pandemic started and completely virtual. And there was that was probably the biggest need for foundations of being able to provide for nonprofits. A lot of them were trying to figure out how they're going to get funding for their programs. And so it made the easiest why for me of every day getting up and literally being virtually of getting up from my bed to my chair, walking over. But no part of it ever felt like work. It was like enjoyed this. And I think for many people during the pandemic, that's when they kind of reevaluated like, why am I doing this work or do I love this work? And for me, I think it didn't even cross my mind during pandemic where I actually hadn't met my boss or my team yet for the foundation, but like we were working together for 8 months and our job every day was okay, we need to get this funds out to these nonprofits, or we need to figure out how we can put them in touch with the right resources to benefit, a lot of the students. So that was what drove me and made me so passionate about the work, where it didn't feel like it when I woke up. It was like, oh, there's a calling that, hey, we got to make sure these students get these funds today. Like that made it so much enjoyable. And I really started with kind of my roots with my family, but also just like, why are you doing this work? And I think that was the core part.
So when you talk about good people in the world, you gotta be up there at the top, right? You in the family too, the whole family's doing this. You guys have a heart of servants, and I always I think I've been very blessed. I think in the pecking order in the world, it goes God, Grandpa Natsky. Like, I think he's right there. I've never seen a man who's had such a servant heart, but it seems like that's deeply rooted in who you are, and you found something that you enjoy, that you are passionate about, and found a career doing that. I think a lot of people go into exactly what you said, the inverse of what Simon Sinek says, which, if you have
Yeah.
not read the book Start With Why,
Yes.
phenomenal book. I actually read it when I was in Washington, D.C., and that solidified why I enjoy my career path.
Love it.
And I didn't know why before, but because of that book, that's what I did.
Absolutely.
But finding out, people will find out what they want to do and then just chase it,
Hmm.
and they never find out the why until, just like you said, it's too late. And now people are
Yeah.
scrambling. I had a 45-year-old guy that I'm helping coach the other day, and he's like, "Hey, how do I get into the sport industry?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Man, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably a little late to start, right? Because you don't want to go start early on. Maybe not, but you're creating a more difficult path because some people just don't want to ask the hard question.
Yeah.
Why is the hard question? Take
Absolutely.
a deep look at yourself and understand why you wanna do it. For you, it sounds like that's to serve, right? That's
Absolutely.
to serve others. Walk through a little bit about what foundation life, or what life on that side of the sport industry, or what you're doing right now with
Yeah.
PG&E. What is that like for anybody who's never heard that you can go work on the foundation side of a sport organization, of a corporate organization? What is that like?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a question I always talk to a lot of students about, and I think it's the key part of research. I'll probably bring it up many times at the finish of this call of just you need to learn everything you can about a specific department or organization, and foundation was something I did not know. And so when it comes to many different sports leagues, they run it differently. Most teams, and I think many of the listeners may know of, like, community relations is a key part that you hear for most sports teams, but that's kind of different from foundation. So community relations is usually a lot of the work with working with the players and a lot of volunteer engagement that they're doing in the community. A lot of the front facing part that you see. Foundations is typically like 50-50 raffle that you may see for any sports games you all go to, where they're raising funds and they're using that to distribute out either to a nonprofit that is being honored with the 50-50, or they're keeping it for their foundation to reallocate it. So a part of that is most sports teams have their own 501(c)(3), which is what we call the nonprofit. And that is a part where it depends on every team. Some teams have a 501(c)(3) and it incorporates the community relations. So there's different nuances of that, but also there's others that it may not even be, there may be completely separate. It's a different arm of the organization where the team is funding or working with community relations. Again, because I said most of the players are in it. So they want, if they're doing an event with Steph Curry or Klay Thompson out in the community relations is doing a lot of the working with the agents and booking that and planning that out, and knowing what the school is going to be and how, okay, do we need any waivers? So that is a big component for anyone interested in looking in community relations, of knowing wherever the area is that if you want to work for that team. So that's a part of, like, hey, I want to be on the community relations at the Los Angeles Lakers. Like, start doing a lot of research at the nonprofits around that area. You should know all about the groups that they already work with. And so that's a part of what community relations would be. And then the foundation is really just the, okay, do you know a lot about event planning? Do you know a lot about setting up a gala? Do you know a lot about the part of creating funds and being able to distribute it back out? So grant making. And these are all skills that you can get from literally working at a nonprofit. You know, I tell people, if you want to work in this role, Sometimes it's hard to find a role in the foundation right out the back. You know, I graduate college, I got a degree, and I worked at some nonprofits in college. I volunteer and I want to be in a foundation. Sometimes there might be a perfect job. I never knock anyone. If there's a job there, apply for it, get into it. But more times than not, a lot of those roles are you were in the organization, worked at a few departments, and they moved you into that because they know you have trust in the organization. So how do you get experience to get in that is really working with nonprofits. And so part of when I mentioned research, like research a lot of the companies, or sorry, kind of saying companies, but research a lot of the nonprofits that are receiving grants from a sports team that you want to work for, and try to volunteer with those groups and know the events that they are having, because then sometimes you might be able to build a connection or build your network in the nonprofit space as it leads into sports. And so it goes many routes, but those are at least kind of the two core. And then honestly, they can break out to many other things. I would say, for example, at the Golden State Warriors, we have a great program called Generation Thrive, and it's focused purely on helping the teachers and educators. There's a lot of programs for students, but there's not as many of, okay, how are we getting the needs for teachers now, especially since there's so much burnout. So that's a completely different part of the arm, like a philanthropic arm of the Warriors, where it's Generation Thrive, the foundation, and community relations. You know, so those are three different areas you could work. So kind of depends on every organization. I think it's learning at what their mission is. I think that's another part of doing the research of, what do you care about? Do you care about recycling? Look for the organization. I don't know this off the top of my head, but I would imagine most of the like teams in Portland or in Seattle, specifically in Seattle, because it's Climate Pledge Arena, very big on sustainability. So if you are
Yep.
in Seattle area, it's thinking about, okay, well, what are some sustainable projects that I did in college that I can use on my resume, that might be a great way of showing, oh, this person knows a lot about this topic, that might make them a great candidate. So lot of avenues you can go when it goes into the community relations or foundation side, but the key part is researching. There's so much information out there now with these sports teams and what they're giving out. So it's kind of not an excuse, as I say to a lot of my students, of
You
like,
cannot be lazy anymore.
exactly, you can't apply and you're like, oh, I didn't know that they fund this. It's more times than not, a lot of that info's out there, you know? So I always tell, like, just do as much research as you possibly can. Um, and it helps with at least learning about those different parts of the philanthropic side of sports.
People out there right now that have no idea what this all entails before you just said that, right? What are some of the really cool moments? Because in sports, we don't work in sports because we watch men or women run on a field or a court. That's not the purpose. The purpose is the feeling that either you get or you create, the emotions that you get or you create in some capacity
Yeah.
along your journey. If you want to work in sports, you felt a feeling or emotion, you were in an atmosphere that
Mm.
made you feel some type of way.
Yeah.
What are some of the experiences that you've had or emotions that you've had on the community side that drives you to keep going back and putting in that work every day in this portion of your
Absolutely.
career path?
Absolutely. Yeah, so at the Warriors, we had funded, I had about 60 grantees. In my current role at PG&E, about 50. And so a lot, as you imagine, all of them have galas or end of the year celebrations, and going to them and seeing kind of where is the funds going to, you know, and you see these events and see these students who come and speak about the impact of what this nonprofit has done for them. And that's usually what keeps me going. I would say specifically, I know when we were at the Warriors, one of our big nonprofits we worked with was the Boys and Girls Club, and their end of the year gala, they have like student of the year celebration of like students that were just literally crushing it, and they're about to go to college and have all these scholarships on their way. And so hearing their life stories, they come up on stage and share it. And you hear about students who, you know, dealing with parents who were divorced, and one may have overdosed, and now they're a single parent, and the child is working two jobs and being at school and having to get home to make sure to take care of mom, and then still got all these scholarships, got a 4.0, is going to Stanford. Like, it made me feel like, yeah, I'm not worth anything. Like hearing these students, like these are the real heroes, you know? And like, but like, I think that's the part of hearing like they talk about these nonprofits are what keep me like centered. Like it was like they look forward to having a safe place that they can come to learn, or they never thought about working in STEM or in sports. And because of this nonprofit or this individual, they inspired them or exposed them to something, and now that opened up a trajectory for the rest of their life, you know? So I think that's the part that's I mean, there's dozens and dozens of events I've gone to and heard from students, but I think that's the part that energizes me, gets me fired up every time of continuing to go to work, because you know that it's going to a good cause, and helping these students being able to know that, man, there's so much out there for them, and there's people who care about us. You know, it's not just we go to these nonprofits or life is hard and no one cares. There's a lot of amazing organizations in every city. For every listener here, I'm positive there's so many really really cool people who are doing great work in nonprofits. Um, and we don't know about it sometimes, you know. So I think just seeing it is one of those, like, that's all I need to know to keep doing my work. And yeah, I can just go on and on about it, but yeah, I think the big part is seeing a lot of these students who they're directly impacted from these nonprofits that we had supported. And yeah, it makes you want to run through a wall every time. So
Did I hear so in the last you said you had 50 of these with PG&E and you've been there a year. So your end of your last 60 days must just be an absolute blast. It's just gala after party after party.
yeah, it's hard because basically, you know, you do the math, it's basically a gala a week. And so not all of them you can attend. I always say this. There's some groups where it's like I just come to a site visit. It depends on the individual. I love going to galas, and there's other people who like love and go to every single one. For me, I'm definitely more of a, like, can I go during like tutoring time, and I want to see the work of the programming. And so that's where I find my bread and butter at, of okay, can I come in from 3 to 4:30 on a Tuesday, when the students are just in their zone, you know? And that's the part that keeps me going. But yeah, it can be very, it was a lot, especially at the Warriors, where it's when you have that many organizations and you love all of them, like every single one of them I love, I care for. It's hard to try to make it to every single event, because then, you know, at some points it's you can't make it, and you have to have the balance, because even outside the galas you still have your work to do with the game days and things like that. So it can add up quickly, but I think that's the part of like, hey, that's you're very blessed and fortunate to have a role where that's what I have to do outside of work, is going to a gala to see some students speak about the impact of this nonprofit grant, you know? So I can't complain on that end at all.
It's really cool to hear you because I think we can call it the elephant in the room. In some people, some companies, the stigma around the 501(c)(3) is like, oh, they just need a tax write off.
Mhm.
Fair, right? To call it out. And some companies, that's probably the case, right? How many companies in the world? There's probably some people that have nonprofits or started them just as a write off. You also hear about some of the poor things, the embezzlement in
Yeah.
501(c)(3s. Like there are bad things out there, and if you look for it, you'll find it. And that's not just in nonprofits; that's all over the country. To hear the actual impact, the physical, in the flesh, this person was going through hell, and because of what we are doing, they are now at Stanford. Because of what we're doing, they now have an opportunity to go run a company somewhere else.
Mhm.
Because of what we're doing, they had food this evening,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? It doesn't have to be the 4.0 at Stanford's. It
Yeah.
can be, hey, this 16-year-old grew up rough, nothing that he or she did. And
Right.
now they have an opportunity because of what we're doing to have food on the table for their 3 or 4 brothers and sisters, right? And that side of sport, I don't believe comes out enough because we will see it. Everybody out there will see the Clay Thompsons of the world going to visit a hospital visit, right? They'll see the Steph
Mhm.
Currys of the world putting on a golf tournament. That is awesome. I'm not taking anything away from that.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
players do more than they're on video for. First of all, everybody out there, they're not just doing 1 or 2 of these a year. They're most of the time contractually obligated to go to a bunch, and they do way above and beyond that. And you
Yeah.
won't see all of them. But there are individuals like yourself who want this as a career path. Your career path is giving back to others. Walk through a little bit for me and the listeners. I want to learn as well. When
Mhm.
your career is to give to others, how are you motivated? Is the organization still motivated to go and get those funding dollars? Because at the end of the day, somebody's got to go get those funding dollars. Are you on that side? Have you heard about people on that side? What does that look like, so that you have the opportunity to give these back?
Yeah, I think it's the skill of obviously in the role that you do, Tanner, with in sales. And I think being able to know how to talk to people is a big part of that. There's certain people who are in charge of how we spend the dollars. There are people who are in charge of raising the dollars.
Mm.
I can say I don't like the raising the dollars part. I definitely like to give it out, but it's a necessity. It's a part of the work where again, I think it's knowing like, hey, I need to make this phone call, or we need to do this 50-50 raffle, or we need to do this gala event, in order to have the why. Exactly. Even as your team, you have a why in the work you do. And so I think that's a part of knowing how it works of the game and what skill sets you need to know to do it very well. And so I did not know I would be doing fundraising often in my role previously with the Warriors. In my current role, I don't do it, but with the Warriors, and previous roles, I honestly learned it from my first job. I think I didn't mention it, but first role was with the Ontario Reign. That was my first part-time job, right out of college, doing inside sales, and I was not good at it. I will always say this. Kudos to you all, everyone in sales. It's a grind of a job, but the uncomfortable part of it grows a lot of skill sets for you, and I think that was a part for me of being in that role. I would always had excelled in everything that I normally do, and that was the first place where obviously we have a sales board, and I am last place every week consistently for 8 months. That'll humble you very well. But the whole point, I'm very good at like, well, how do I improve? And just seeing what my sales number was from the first month to the eighth month, I knew I improved, even though I'm still last. But it was knowing the part of, okay, can you talk to people about a sport that you didn't know, and learning that. And that's how I translate it to a lot of the work that you have to do with fundraising and the game of, okay, you care about this work that you do and you have to fundraise and get funds for it. You need to know why. I think that's a big part of what sales is, of what are you selling? Like why are we selling this? Like what are we trying to get from this customer? And so I don't like to look at it too transactional when it comes to the foundation fundraising side, but it's the game, and we are calling someone with an objective of, hey, would you like to attend our event? Or there's a price point that we're hoping they can pay in order to help the support. And I think that's the part that makes it very easy. It's, hey, can you attend our gala event? For the Warriors, we did a poker tournament. That alone, people love to go to because it's fun, and obviously players are there. But it's also knowing like we actually had some of our nonprofits come and speak at the poker tournament before it started. Of, this is the work I do, thank you for being here, appreciate all the support that's going towards us. And like I think the call to action is a big part of when you're trying to do the fundraising, whether on the phone or in person at an event. It's what's the reason you're calling them to, hey, spend money with us. And obviously they're going to get the tax write-off, to your point. That's the game and that's how it works, but
Hey, if the game
hopefully,
is in play, I'm gonna play the game.
that's the
I'm
point.
gonna play the game.
I am not even mad if someone is donating purely for the tax write-off. That's fine. You rather have them donate and for the tax write-off than if they're blowing the money on something else and the money doesn't go to anywhere. So um again, but in the foundation work, I honestly found like 99% of the time they did care. And even though they do get the tax write-off, they really were, hey, where is the funds going to, or what is the foundation fundraise for? They ask me all the time at PG&E, like, what is the work you all do and where's the money going to? And it's when I share the stories or connect them to the nonprofits, people just, oh man, that's, you all did that. Or again, and let me be very clear of this. A lot of the work is done by the nonprofits. As the foundation, we help provide funds and give access or resources, but I don't want to take away from the fact that a lot of the nonprofits are the ones down in the dirt doing this work, working with these students every day after school, you know? And so it's easier from the foundation side when you're just funding it, but being able to be a part of it is something that I like to do. And so that's why I say of when you come to fundraising, like even though we're selling the money and we're receiving the money or asking for it, it's like, let me tell you where this money's going to. And if you're ever interested, reach out to me and I'll set you up with the nonprofit. You know, like I always would take it a little farther of connect them and make them very emotionally attached to why these funds are important. And so it's a long-winded answer of kind of how it works with the fundraising side, but I think that's the big part of knowing how you connect the person that you want them to spend the money with you in order to give it out, but having a call to action so that way when they hear it, they are like, you know what, that resonates with me because was at the Boys and Girls Club growing up, or I went to an after school program, or I did a summer camp, or I did a math tutoring session during summer. You know, like there's so many things that all of us had done ourselves, and there's programs doing it. So it's when you hear that, it may, you know, touch a chord with you internally of like, you know what, maybe I will help and donate a little more for this one.
Storytelling,
Yes.
massive. I have a confession to make live. Callie and I found a foundation. You and my wife would get along very well, by the way, because she would
Oh,
give everything away if she could. Like if we didn't have to eat dinner, we wouldn't. She would just give it away.
love
And I
it.
think you have the same servant mindset. I sell things for a living, and we found a foundation that we really enjoy. It's called Dream on 3. They create experiences for kids that are all over the country. They're in 38 states. They're actually founded and rooted here in Charlotte. The founders are phenomenal people. We've been blessed to go to a dinner with them, get to
Awesome.
understand them, and really we are embedded. I am open to opening the checkbook for them.
Love it. I love it.
It's really difficult for me to make a phone call to ask somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
And I sell for a living. But I think what you just said is we are actually robbing people of an opportunity to help if we
Hmm.
don't. And this goes beyond sales. So for everybody out there, this isn't just about sales. This is about anything that you want in life, anything that you feel is valuable, and you can create a story for
Yeah.
either yourself or for somebody else. Go
Hmm.
and ask the question. Go ask your boss to present next week in front of the C-level execs. Go ask your professor, hey, can I go talk with the head of video for the college basketball team? Go
Hmm.
ask these questions because you're actually robbing them of the opportunity to give by
Hmm.
you not asking the question. And you just kicked me in the butt, Austin, because I need to start making those phone calls. But it hit me so hard when you said that. It hit me right between the eyes of we're actually depriving people of the opportunity to help others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a big part that hit me, and I'll share this too, is one of I would say like an epiphany I had was my first role when I was in DC. And when I was it was the first time of me doing the internship in sports. And um, in full transparency, I was the only person of color in the entire studio.
Mm.
And that was the first time it like hit me of, oh, you know what? Like I need to figure out how to help others who just never seen this before see this or get exposure. And to your point, it's the man, how do you ask the right questions in order to allow someone else to be, you know, because then we realize, and I've learned this now in many different teams, that if they're trying to get a certain demographic in their organization, it's just they're not recruiting at a certain spot. You know, they realized, oh, we need to go to this university, or going to an HBCU to do our tabling in order to get more recruitment. And I think that's a part of the storytelling and asking the right questions you can get from that. And at least I learned that a lot of when you ask certain things in sports, and you, again, for many of the listeners, it's you're trying to figure out what you want to do and you're trying to figure out like man, I'm gonna make a big gamble if I'm gonna move out of state to a different, for a role that I don't know might pan out. It's how do you ask the right questions to get all the information you can before getting into that? So, um, it goes all over the place, I think, and how you think about it. But I think exactly to your point, Tanner, it's how do you look at the right questions to be able to serve? And by doing that, it helps you all out. So I think that's the part of when you ask the right questions, it will help you out, not try to be a selfish way, but in the same way you're allowing the other person an opportunity to be, oh, you know what? I never thought about bringing or recruiting from a different type of school. I never thought about helping a student who lives in North Carolina and they want to come to California and they just never knew how to work in sports here. Like, this is an opportunity for me to help them. So to your point, I think giving back it works in so many different avenues, but to your point, it's truly from just, can you ask the right questions to get to that? And I think that's a big part of it.
As we wrap up here, I could talk to you all day. I really could. Your heart, dude, I think if I had any inkling of living in the state of California, we'd be really good friends. Um, and
Definitely.
I think if we were close together, we could do something really special. And I love having these conversations because there's not a lot of people in the sport industry that have a heart like yours. And I think everybody that works in sports in some capacity has a heart for passion and giving and creating experiences in
Yeah.
some capacity because that's what sport is entertainment. But your heart goes beyond just doing that for yourselves or for a small group of people. You truly want to touch as many lives as you can.
Yeah.
And that's deeply rooted in your family, which I absolutely love. And if you're out there listening right now and don't have a family that's deeply rooted like that, go find a mentor that
Yeah.
is. Just go
Absolutely.
surround yourself with people that have that mindset because it doesn't have to come from directly from your family, directly from where you grew up. Go find a mentor. Um, and Austin, I'm speaking on your behalf, honestly, without asking you, but I would assume that you're open to
Percent.
everybody reaching out.
Percent. 100%. Please reach out, especially in this area. I know it's a lot of questions that can come from.
As we wrap up, I have two more questions. If I'm on, I won't even. I'll just lay it out instead of assuming. What am I missing? What am I missing about your role, about the impact that kids can have going into your role, out of school, change of profession? What am I missing about what you're passionate about that we can be impactful for people today?
Yeah. I would say there's three things that I live by, and I think it helps a lot of people. So three things you should always consider for how you should operate going into sports. It's research, networking, and focus. And by focus, I mean like actually narrowing what you want to do. I'll do a very brief highlight of all of them, but like in terms of how you look at research, it's look at every possible option that you can into this role and do meet as many people. Tanner and all the guest speakers he's had has emphasized this enough of, if you want to reach out to someone, just reach out to them. The worst thing they can do is say no, and you're back to where you were before. So research every role. That's how I got into a lot of my positions, was being able to know by the time I got into the interview how to do it. And so that's be the first one. And second one I would say is the networking of, start building your network out now in order for, and I this is the important part, not for that first job out of college. I will say this many times, that job is kind of irrelevant. Maybe that's a broad way of saying it, but the first job is for experience. It's not about, okay, this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my career. If you are, that's perfect. That's actually, I'm jealous and I envy you if you were able to find that. But more times than not, it's usually that third or fourth job. So start thinking about, okay, what do I need to know for that dream job? And what do I have to sacrifice to get that? And that's a big part of like writing that out. I don't think a lot of people do that, of like, what's your goal and who do I need to talk to get to it? And that helped me a ton with being able to write out like, hey, if I want to work in this role, who do I need to connect with? And I learned, man, I need to start talking to people in nonprofit, not just people in sports. So for many of you, if you're trying to work in sports or you want to eventually pivot, talk to the people where you want to go, not people where you're at, and that'll at least lay the foundation. And then pivot and really focus. I mean, of like, okay, how do you actually? What do you want to do? I think it's, instead of trying to look at 1,000 jobs, look at two or three and really hone in on, okay, is my resume and cover letter tailored to that? Did I meet the right people towards this? do I know when they hire? Do I know when their season is for when they're off in the summer? Like you should know everything about the 3 or 4 companies that you want to work for, sports teams that you want to work for, and do all your due diligence of focusing it. That one's huge. I think that's the part where a lot of us get in. It gets very hard, or we get frustrated when we're applying for jobs and we're not hearing back, you know? And so I think that's where, at least for me, it helps a ton of, you know what, like, I want to work in the NBA. I want to work for these 2 teams. They're in California. Let me focus on just these. Let me look at the area, because when you actually hone in on them, it makes it a lot easier. And down the road, you'll be able to not spend as much energy with 1,000 applications compared to the 2 to 3 that you should have. So
Mm, I love it. Last one, attitude effort results. How would you summarize or how would you explain attitude effort results and how it's impacted your career?
yeah, when I hear it, I think of like an equation of like attitude plus effort equals results. And so how I think of an equation more though is it's a game, and you need to understand the rules of it. And if you
Mm.
don't understand the rules, then don't be mad if it doesn't work out in your favor. Um,
It's like
a
playing a
lot of
board game the wrong way because you just don't understand it. You're like, I can't believe I can't win. It's like, well, you have no idea how to play the game.
Exactly. It's one of my favorite quotes. J. Cole says, and I'll use the cleaner version of it, but it just says, "Learn to play the game, or watch the game play you, or be that broke person talking about I stayed true." And I heard that when I was 18, and the premise of it's like you can play the game and understand the rules. But if you don't want to play it, you will be that broke person talking about, like, you're on the outside looking in of like, well, I stay true to it. So that is how I at least quantify the equation of attitude, effort, results of like attitude. You have to have that. It's a mental part. And then what you do in terms of your effort physically, of like what are you actually doing, like that's the game. You have to put those 2 together and you will get results. If you're just putting a lot of effort but you don't have a good attitude, you're not going to get results. And if you have a great attitude but you don't do anything, you're not going to get results. So it's a very simple equation where it's, if you do these things, it equates to success, and it, again, success not on your time, on the time that it's going to work out. I always say on his time. Like, you have a dream job and it may not be when you think it's going to come, but you want to be ready for it. And I think attitude and effort is a big part of that. And so, yeah, I think that's how I think about it. Just the equation of the game you got to play. So
And success does not just mean wealth. Success
correct.
has a different definition for everybody, something I think I have struggled with early in my career and that I'm continuously learning. Success is different to anybody. Can it mean wealth? Yeah, if that's what you value.
Absolutely.
For you,
Absolutely.
for you, from what I'm learning today, probably not wealth, probably impacting people, right? And
Yeah.
everybody has something different. And so I appreciate you. This has been awesome. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us and
Uh,
impacting the Attitude
appreciate
for
that.
Results community, Austin.
Thank you, Tan. Appreciate you having me.